Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really interesting question. Could nature itself offer some support for managing ADHD?
It's a fascinating area.
Yeah, you shared two great pieces with us. First, there's this study from the American Journal of Public Health, the AJPH, looking at how being in green outdoor spaces affects ADHD symptoms in kids.
Right.
And second, we have a review from Bentham Science that dives into the evidence for using various herbs and, dietary supplements.
Exactly. So the plan is to really unpack these, see what insights they offer beyond maybe the more conventional medications.
Right. Not necessarily replacing standard treatments, but understanding what else might be out there, what these sources say about complementary approaches.
Precisely. That AJPH study, its title is pretty direct, a potential natural treatment for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It really zeroes in on our surroundings.
Okay.
And then the Bentham Science Review, application of herbs and dietary supplements in ADHD management, gives us that broader look at different natural substances.
Okay, let's start with the great outdoors then. This AJPH study had a pretty clear goal, right? Just seeing if those green sort of natural environments made a real difference for ADHD symptoms.
That's right. And not just anecdotally, but across a diverse group of kids. They wanted to see if there was a consistent pattern.
So how did they do it? It sounds kind of clever.
It was quite neat, actually. Instead of some complex intervention, they surveyed parents nationwide, asked them about 49 common activities, things kids do after school or on weekends.
Okay.
And then the parents rated how those activities seemed to affect their child's ADHD symptoms, specifically depending on where they happened. Was it a green outdoor space, a built outdoor space, or indoors?
Right, right. And I remember they had specific definitions for those places to make it clear what they meant.
They did, yeah. Green outdoor was basically a mostly natural area like a park, maybe a farm, or even just a green backyard or neighborhood space.
Gotcha.
Then built outdoor was, mostly human-made stuff. Parking lots, downtown areas, maybe a neighborhood without much greenery.
Makes sense. And then indoors, obviously.
And indoors, yeah.
So when the parents were rating things, what were they actually looking at? It had to be stuff they could, see.
Exactly. Observable behaviors. They focused on 4 things linked to the ADHD criteria: difficulty focusing on boring tasks, trouble finishing things, difficulty listening or following directions, and problems resisting distractions.
Okay.
Parents used a scale, like much worse, worse, same, better, or much better, describing the effects in the hour or so after the activity.
Okay, so this is the big reveal moment. What did they find? It sounds like it was pretty striking.
It really was the main finding. Green outdoor activities led to significantly better symptom ratings compared to activities in either the built outdoor or the indoor settings.
Significantly better. Wow.
Yeah. And what's really compelling is that this was true even when the activity itself was exactly the same.
Oh, interesting. Like what?
Well, like reading a book. Reading in a park was rated as having a more positive impact than reading the same book inside or, say, on a city street corner.
Wow, that's powerful. Same activity, different setting, different outcome for managing symptoms. And this wasn't just for, kids living in the countryside, right?
No, not at all. That was another key finding. This benefit, this green space effect, it was consistent across all sorts of factors,
Like what?
like the child's age, their gender, family income level, whether they lived in the city, suburbs, or rural areas, different regions of the U.S.,
Huh.
and even whether or not they had a formal ADHD diagnosis.
So what you're saying is this isn't just about having access to huge national parks. Even a small patch of green in a city neighborhood could potentially help a child struggling with focus.
That's what the data suggests, yes. It points towards a potentially universal and, importantly, pretty accessible strategy.
The study also mentioned why this might be happening, didn't it? Something about attention fatigue. Can we unpack that a little?
Yeah, they touched on that. The idea is that maintaining focused attention is demanding, right? It leads to mental fatigue.
Yeah.
And the thinking is that individuals with ADHD might be more susceptible to this attention fatigue. The study authors propose that natural environments, green settings, might somehow help restore that depleted attention.
Restore it. How?
Well, they even mentioned some research suggesting a link to the right prefrontal cortex part of the brain involved in focus, but also in feeling mentally tired. It hints that maybe our brains process natural scenes differently, more effortlessly perhaps than, say, busy urban scenes.
So being in nature kind of gives that part of the brain a break, lets it recharge, making it easier to focus later on.
That's the leading theory, yeah. It fits with other findings that nature can reduce mind wandering and encourage a kind of attention that doesn't feel quite so draining.
That makes intuitive sense.
And interestingly, some parents in the study, when asked about specific positive activities, actually pointed out things done in green settings. So maybe there's an intuitive understanding of this already happening.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, so it really seems like something potentially as simple as making time for a park visit or just playing in a green backyard could be a valuable tool.
It certainly looks that way based on this study.
All right, let's switch gears then. Let's delve into our second source, that Bentham Science Review, looking at herbs and dietary supplements. This seems like a much broader category.
It definitely is. The review's goal was pretty comprehensive. Look at ADHD, causes, mechanisms, the economic side of things, and then explore these alternative treatments, specifically plants and supplements.
And why look at alternatives? I guess the side effects of conventional meds are a factor.
That's a major driver they highlight, yes. The potential for side effects with some standard medications leads people to look for other options or complementary approaches.
So after reviewing all the research on these herbs and supplements, what was their main conclusion? Was it a thumbs up or?
It was more of a potential, but needs more research. They concluded that yes, plants and dietary supplements do show potential beneficial effects for ADHD.
Okay, potential.
But, and this is a big, but they strongly emphasize the need for more rigorous large-scale studies. We need better data to really understand effectiveness and safety across the board.
Right. And quality control, too, I imagine.
Absolutely. They stress the importance of consistent high manufacturing standards for these natural products, because that can be a real issue.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so the review mentioned a whole bunch of specific substances. Let's maybe touch on some of the key ones. Ginkgo biloba came up first.
Yes, ginkgo. It's got a long history, traditional uses related to antioxidant effects, maybe effects on blood flow. And the review notes some studies have looked at it specifically for ADHD symptoms. Other research hints at potential cognitive benefits, too, which could be relevant.
Okay. Then there was saffron, which I mostly just think of for cooking.
Right. But it seems to have some interesting properties studied in labs and things affecting the immune system, maybe cardioprotective. More relevant here, though, is that some components might influence processes linked to brain health. The review suggests saffron might affect how the brain handles dopamine and norepinephrine, key chemicals for attention and motivation, which are often involved in ADHD.
Wow. Okay. Unexpected. What about Bacopa monnieri? Rami, I think it's called?
Yes, Brahmi, another one with a long history in Ayurvedic medicine. Traditionally used for various things, maybe pain relief, anti-inflammatory effects.
Right.
But importantly for us, research has looked at its impact on cognitive function and ADHD symptoms. Some smaller studies have suggested it might help with attention and impulsivity.
Interesting. And pycnogenol from pine bark.
Yeah, extract from Pinus pinaster. It's gained attention for various potential benefits, including maybe anti-inflammatory action. The review mentions studies looking at its role in ADHD, though the abstract didn't detail the results.
Okay. What about valerian and lemon balm? People often use those for sleep or calming down.
Exactly. And that's the connection, traditionally used for sleep and anxiety. The review points to some evidence suggesting they might improve hyperactivity, attention, and impulsivity in kids.
Huh. How might they work?
The thinking involves interaction with GABA receptors. Those have a calming effect on the brain and possibly influencing dopamine levels too.
That makes sense, especially if things like poor sleep or anxiety are making ADHD symptoms worse for someone.
Precisely. Then there's ashwagandha, another major player from Ayurveda.
Right. What about that work?
Used traditionally for brain concerns. Lab studies suggest it might protect nerve cells, maybe by fighting oxidative stress. The review says human clinical studies are limited, but hint at potential benefits for things like anxiety and possibly ADHD.
It's really something seeing these ancient remedies put under the microscope like this.
It is. The review also mentioned compound herbal preparations, CHPs. What are those?
Basically just combinations of different herbs. Instead of studying one plant, some research looks at specific mixtures designed for ADHD.
Wow, okay.
And the review notes that some of these combos have shown promise, particularly for improving focus. Maybe a synergy effect.
Interesting. Okay, so beyond the herbs, the review also brought up nutritional supplements, right? Vitamins, minerals. Yes, another big category. The review acknowledges their potential role, though it didn't detail specific findings in the abstract we saw.
But based on other research we've looked at, there are studies on things like...
Right, things like magnesium. Some studies suggest potential benefits there. Zinc, which might be involved in how the brain processes information, and maybe hyperactivity. Iron low levels have been investigated in relation to ADHD symptoms and even how well stimulant meds work.
Okay.
Also, acetyl-L-carnitine has been looked at in some early trials. Vitamin D status and supplementation effects are being studied. And of course, omega-3 fatty acids. That's a huge area of research for brain health and ADHD.
Wow, it really is a wide field of ongoing investigation, isn't it?
Definitely.
The review also made a point about the cost of ADHD, didn't it? Suggesting that finding cost-effective alternatives is also important.
Absolutely. The economic burden, healthcare, school support, work impact can be substantial. So that adds another layer to why exploring potentially more affordable natural options makes sense, alongside conventional care.
Okay, so let's try to sum up what we've gleaned from these two sources today. On one hand, it seems pretty clear that spending time in green, natural environments has a noticeable positive effect on managing ADHD symptoms in kids.
Yeah, that AJPH study was quite compelling on that front,
Ah,
and it seems broadly applicable.
right. And then on the other hand, with herbs and supplements, it's more like there's a whole range of possibilities showing promise.
Exactly. Things like ginkgo, bacopa, valerian, lemon balm, ashwagandha, plus nutrients like magnesium or omega-3s. There's some initial evidence suggesting benefits.
And this is the crucial caveat from the Bentham Review, we need more research.
Definitely. Much more rigorous research. Larger studies, well-controlled trials are essential to really confirm these effects.
Yeah.
And that issue of standardized manufacturing, ensuring quality and consistency, that's vital too.
Right, so lots of potential, but the science is still developing for many of these supplements.
That's a fair way to put it. Early stages for a lot of it.
Okay. Important points to keep in mind. So, thinking about this initial evidence, the fairly strong case for green spaces and the emerging potential for some supplements, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How could we maybe more intentionally weave these elements into daily life, especially for kids dealing with ADHD symptoms?
It's a great question.
Yeah. And what other questions does this raise for you about just how interconnected our environment, our nutrition, and our neurodevelopment really are? Definitely gives you something to mull over.
It certainly does.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive today.